Let me ask you something that might make you uncomfortable. Why is it that the loudest person in the room is almost never the most successful one?
That's the question, isn't it? You see people everywhere posting about their goals, announcing their next big move, telling everyone what they're about to do, and then nothing happens.
Exactly. And I want you to think about that pattern for a second, because it's not a coincidence. It's not bad luck. It's a fundamental misunderstanding of how power actually works. Welcome to English Peak. I'm Aiden.
And I'm Skye, and today we're going to talk about something that the top 1% of performers understand deeply, something most people never figure out.
Moving in silence, the art of working without the noise. And by the end of this conversation, you're going to see the world differently. You're going to understand why the most dangerous person in any room is the one you never hear coming.
I love that, the one you never hear coming. Aiden, before we go deeper, I want to ask you something personal. Was there a moment in your own life where you learned this lesson the hard way?
Absolutely. And I think most people who understand this concept learned it by making the opposite mistake first. I used to talk about everything, every plan, every vision, every idea. I thought sharing it made it more real. What it actually did was drain the energy right out of it.
And that's what we're unpacking today, so let's get into it. Chapter 1.
Chapter 1. The Dopamine Trap. Why your brain is sabotaging your success.
Okay, Aiden, dopamine trap. That sounds intense. Break it down.
So here's the psychology behind it. When you tell someone about a goal, your brain actually experiences a small version of the reward it would feel if you had already achieved it. There's a word for this. It's called a premature reward. Premature, meaning it comes too early before the work is done.
So basically, talking about the goal tricks your brain into thinking you've already done it?
Precisely. And this is not a theory. This has been studied. Psychologist Peter Gallwitzer spent decades researching what he called identity-based goal announcements. And what he found was striking. People who announced their goals publicly were significantly less likely to follow through than people who kept them private.
That's wild, because everything on social media tells you to manifest out loud, to speak your future into existence, to declare your goals to the universe.
And look, I understand why that idea is popular. It feels powerful. It feels brave. But here's the distinction I want you to hold. There's a difference between vision and announcement. You can hold a massive vision internally. You can be completely committed, completely on fire about where you're going without broadcasting it to everyone.
So it's not about being secretive just for the sake of it. It's about protecting your energy.
That's the right frame. And I want to introduce a word here that is critical for this conversation. Complacency. Say it with me. Complacency. It means settling. It means becoming too comfortable with where you are, losing the drive to keep pushing. And premature announcements breed complacency because your brain feels like the work is already partially done.
So the people posting their gym selfie on day 1 are already less likely to be at the gym on day 30.
For many of them, yes. The post was the product, the reaction was the reward, and the actual work quietly became optional.
This is uncomfortable because I think we've all done this. I know I have.
Everyone has, including me. The difference is awareness. Once you see the trap, you can step around it. And that's exactly what the top 1% have learned to do. They've rewired their relationship with recognition. They don't need it up front. They can wait.
And that waiting, that patience, that's actually a skill.
It's one of the most powerful skills you can develop. We'll talk about that more in Chapter 3, but first, let's go deeper into what silence actually looks like in practice. Chapter 2. Chapter 2. Strategic Silence. How the best players move on the board.
I want to challenge something here, Aiden, because when I hear moving in silence, part of me thinks, okay, but if no one knows what you're doing, how do you build a reputation? How do you attract opportunities? How do people know to come to you?
That is the right tension to name, and it's where most people get confused. Strategic silence does not mean invisibility. Let me make that crystal clear. The top performers are absolutely visible, but what they show the world is results, not intentions.
Results, not intentions. Say more.
Think of it like chess. A master chess player doesn't announce their strategy to their opponent. They simply execute, move after move, with precision. And the opponent only understands what happened after it's over. The silence was the strategy.
Okay, that analogy hits different. So you're saying the work itself becomes the communication.
Exactly. Your output speaks. And here's a word I want to bring in here: leverage. Leverage is the ability to create a disproportionately large result from a relatively small input in business, in life, in investing. And silence creates leverage because while others are spending energy talking, you are spending energy building. You are compounding your advantage.
Compounding, like compound interest?
Beautiful connection, Skye. Compound interest, for those who might not know the term, is when your returns start generating their own returns. Your money makes money. Your progress builds on itself. And the same principle applies to execution. Every day you work in silence, you are adding to a compounding foundation, while the person who is talking is spending their resources on reaction and validation.
So the silent worker is actually accumulating wealth in a sense, not just financially, but in terms of skill, positioning, momentum.
That's precisely it, and here's where it gets even more interesting. There's a psychological concept called the observer effect. In physics, it describes how the act of observing something changes it. And in human behavior, the same thing happens. When you put your goals under public observation, you change how you pursue them. You start optimizing for how the journey looks, not how the destination is built.
Oh, that's deep. So when you're performing for an audience, even a small one, you make different decisions than when you're just doing the work.
You start choosing the photogenic path over the effective one. You take the scenic route because it looks better. And somewhere along the way, the goal shifts from achieving something real to appearing as though you are achieving something real.
And that's the silent killer of potential right there.
Silently and slowly. Which brings me to a concept I call the execution gap, the distance between what you say you'll do and what you actually do. Most people have an enormous execution gap, and the reason is not laziness, it's not lack of talent, it's that they've been spending their execution energy on declaration instead of action.
So the gap closes when you stop announcing and start doing.
When you take all the energy you were putting into performance and redirect it into process, that's when things start to accelerate. And I promise you, the people in your life who seem to suddenly appear at a new level, they weren't being mysterious. They were just executing while you were watching.
Wow. Okay. I need a moment with that because I think about people I know who seem to just suddenly level up. And you're right. They weren't talking about it.
They were building every single day without the noise, without the applause, without the validation, just the work and the vision.
All right. Chapter 3.
Chapter 3. The discipline of delayed gratification, the muscle nobody wants to train.
Delayed gratification. This one is hard for people, including me, honestly. We live in an instant world. Everything is immediate. Results, feedback, delivery. The idea of waiting feels almost unnatural now.
And that's exactly why it's a superpower. Because anything that most people find difficult automatically becomes scarce, and scarcity creates value. If everyone could do it, it wouldn't be an edge.
So the discomfort is literally the point.
The discomfort is the filter. It separates the people who say they want something from the people who actually go get it. And the delayed gratification, let's define it clearly. It is the ability to resist the temptation of an immediate reward in order to receive a greater reward later. It sounds simple, it is brutally difficult to practice.
There's actually a famous study about this, the marshmallow experiment.
Yes, Stanford, the 1970s. Children were given a marshmallow and told if you wait 15 minutes without eating it, you'll get a second one.
And what they found when they followed those children decades later was remarkable. The ones who could wait had significantly better outcomes, higher academic achievement, better health, stronger relationships.
Because the ability to delay gratification is really the ability to hold a vision through discomfort.
That is the core of it. And the silent winner does this constantly. Every morning they wake up and they choose the vision over the validation. They choose the process over the applause. They say to themselves, I don't need anyone to know about this today. I just need to move forward today.
And there's a word for that internal drive, isn't there? That ability to keep going without external fuel.
Intrinsic motivation versus extrinsic motivation. Extrinsic means external. It comes from praise, recognition, likes, approval. Intrinsic means it comes from inside, from purpose, from identity, from a deep internal standard. And the research is clear. Intrinsic motivation produces more consistent, more sustained performance than extrinsic motivation.
Because you can't control external rewards, but you can control your internal commitment.
You own your standard. Nobody can take it from you. And here's the thing about the top 1% that most people misunderstand. They're not motivated because things are going well. They're disciplined even when nothing is going well. There's a word I want you to lock in here. Resilience. Resilience is not just recovering from failure. It's maintaining your standard in the absence of reward. It's continuing to execute when the results are invisible, when the progress is microscopic, when nobody is watching and nobody cares.
That's actually a very different definition of resilience than I've heard before. Most people define it as bouncing back.
Bouncing back is part of it, but the deeper layer is staying committed through the invisible phase, because every major achievement has an invisible phase, a period where the work is happening, the foundation is being laid, and from the outside it looks like nothing is going on. The people who survive that phase are the ones who make it.
And I think the loud people, the ones who announce everything, they don't survive that phase as well because they're dependent on the external reaction to fuel them.
You just articulated something incredibly important. When the external feedback disappears, and it always does at some point, they have nothing to fall back on. No internal engine, no intrinsic drive, just silence. And silence with conviction is power.
Now you're thinking like the top 1%. Okay, last chapter, chapter 4.
Chapter 4. Building Your Fortress, the Architecture of a Silent Winner.
So we've talked about the psychology, we've talked about the strategy, we've talked about the discipline. Now I want to know the practical side. What does the life of a silent winner actually look like? What are they doing differently day to day?
Great question, and I want to use a framework here. I call it the 4 pillars of silent execution. The first pillar is environment design. The silent winner is obsessive about their environment. They understand that willpower is a limited resource, so they build systems that make the right action the default action. They remove friction from the path of progress and add friction to the path of distraction.
So instead of relying on motivation every day, they engineer their environment so that the work just happens.
Precisely. Your environment is either working for you or against you. There is no neutral. The second pillar is what I call identity architecture. This is about deciding who you are before you decide what you'll do. The silent winner doesn't say, I'm trying to become successful. They say, I am someone who executes at a high level. That is their identity. And identity drives behavior more powerfully than any motivation speech ever will.
Because you act in alignment with who you believe you are.
Always. If you believe you are a disciplined person, you will behave like a disciplined person, even when it's hard. If you believe you are still becoming disciplined, there's always an exit door in hard moments. Identity closes that door.
That's actually a reframe I need to sit with. I've been thinking of discipline as something I'm building, not something I already am.
Shift that today. The third pillar is what I call signal over noise. The silent winner is ruthless, and I mean truly ruthless, about what information they consume and what conversations they engage in. They understand that your inputs determine your outputs. Every hour spent in low-quality noise is an hour stolen from high-quality thinking.
This is where social media becomes dangerous. It's engineered to maximize noise consumption.
Engineered precisely for that. The platforms profit from your attention, not your success, and the silent winner knows this. They curate their inputs like an investor curates their portfolio, with intention, with criteria, with a long-term lens. The fourth pillar is what I call asymmetric action. This means taking action in areas where others are not looking, in ways others are not expecting, at a pace that compounds over time. Asymmetric means unequal. You are investing effort in a direction that returns disproportionately.
So you're finding the edges, the undervalued areas, the spaces where the competition hasn't arrived yet.
And you move there quietly, you build there quietly, and by the time the noisemakers discover the opportunity, you are already established, already compounding, already 3 steps ahead.
This is reminding me of how the best investors operate. Warren Buffett, he never announces his moves until they're made. He builds in silence and lets the results speak.
Perfect example. And think about the language he uses. He talks about patience as a competitive advantage. He talks about the importance of doing nothing while everyone else is panicking and doing something. The silence is not passive. It is deeply strategically active.
Actively doing nothing externally while everything is happening internally.
That's the paradox. From the outside, the silent winners sometimes look still, but inside, the clarity, the planning, the preparation, it's relentless. And here's what I want to leave you with from this chapter. The world is going to keep getting louder. Social media is going to keep rewarding noise. The pressure to perform publicly is going to increase, not decrease. And in that environment, the person who masters silence is going to have an increasingly rare and increasingly powerful edge.
So developing this skill now is like investing early. The compounding effect is going to be massive.
The earlier you build it, the more you compound it. Silence is not a personality type. It is a practice. It is a skill. And like every skill, it gets stronger every time you choose it over the alternative.
Aiden, this has been genuinely one of the most impactful conversations we've had on this show, and I know our listeners are going to be sitting with a lot of this.
I hope so, because I want to leave everyone with one final thought before we go into our word tour. The world doesn't reward the loudest. It rewards the most consistent. It rewards the ones who showed up every day when nobody was watching and built something real. Be that person. Work in silence. Let the results make the noise.
Let the results make the noise. That is the line. Okay, it's time for the word tour. 10 powerful words from today's conversation. Let's walk through them.
Word tour. Let's go. The first word is complacency. It means settling for less than what you're capable of, becoming too comfortable with where you are and losing your drive. The enemy of growth lives in complacency.
The second word is leverage, the ability to produce a large result from a smaller input in business, in strategy, in life. Smart players are always asking, where is the leverage here?
The third word is compound. To compound means to grow by building on top of previous gains. Compound interest, compound skills, compound reputation. The longer you stay consistent, the faster things grow.
The fourth word is execution, taking consistent, deliberate action toward a specific outcome, not planning, not announcing, executing. The gap between where you are and where you want to be is almost always an execution gap.
The fifth word is resilience. Not just recovering from setbacks, but maintaining your standard in the absence of reward. Staying committed through the invisible phase when no one is watching and nothing seems to be happening.
The sixth word is intrinsic, coming from within. Intrinsic motivation is the drive that doesn't depend on external praise or recognition. It runs on purpose and identity, the most sustainable fuel there is.
The seventh word is scarcity, limited availability. When something is scarce, it becomes valuable. Discipline is scarce. Silence is scarce. Deep focus is scarce. That's exactly why they are powerful edges.
The eighth word is asymmetric, unequal in a strategic way. Asymmetric action means your input and your output are not proportional. You find the high return moves that others are missing, and you execute there quietly.
The ninth word is curate, to carefully select and organize. The silent winner curates their environment, their inputs, their relationships. Not everything gets access to your attention. You decide what enters your world.
And the 10th word, this one is my favorite from today, conviction. Deep, unshakable belief in what you're building and why. Silence without conviction is uncomfortable, but silence with conviction is the most powerful state a person can be in.
Conviction. That's the word to carry forward. Write it down. Put it somewhere you'll see it.
So there you have it. 10 words from today's conversation. Complacency, leverage, compound, execution, resilience, intrinsic, scarcity, asymmetric, curate, and conviction.
Each one of those words is a tool. Learn it, own it, use it. Because language is not just how you communicate. Language is how you think. And the quality of your thinking determines the quality of your life.
And that is what English Peak is all about. We don't just teach you English. We give you the language of people who build, who execute, and who win.
If this conversation moved something in you, if it shifted something in how you see the game, then we have done our job. But don't stop here. The next episode is already waiting for you. Subscribe to English Peak. Turn on notifications because every week we are going deeper, getting sharper, and giving you the tools to reach the top.
Subscribe. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, the summit belongs to those who keep moving, even when no one is watching.
Especially when no one is watching. I'm Aiden.
And I'm Skye.
And this is English Peak. We'll see you at the top.